Good morning. Hello, everyone. This is episode 6, 7? No, which one?
I think it's 7.
Did I not change it on YouTube? Oh my God, I have to change that. I think I wrote episode 6. Okay, we're on episode 7 of the Winchesters. Yeah, and I see I put episode 6 in. Okay, I have to do that afterwards. Because we didn't have one last week, did we? No, the week before. Oh my God, time is not a concept for me anymore. I don't know how it is about with you. It's like, Okay, let's start over. Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk the Winchesters. Today, episode 7. With me, of course, I have Carla from Carla's Astrology. Hello and welcome. Thanks for being here. And today's episode that we're talking about is called The Art of Dying. So we will talk about the plot. This is your spoiler warning if you haven't seen it yet. And then we will just give our thoughts on what we thought about this episode. Okay, so the episode starts with a hunter who we then find out is called Darla. She's being chased by a monster, manages to hide in a barn, but eventually gets killed in a very bloody and brutal way. And we can see that the lights in the barn are flickering, so that gives us a first indicator of what we're dealing with, which is, in that case, always a ghost. And that's what, in the end, turns out to be. So Dean says, hunting has a way of changing a person. After a while, right, wrong, good, evil, they all start to look the same. And then it makes you start to wonder, who's really the monster here, them or me? And that is a really good summary of the episode, pretty much.
Yep.
And especially when it comes to John. And that's something that I want to talk about after the recap. So we see Lata sitting in Mary's house. Like they seem to kind of all live together now in that house, or at least John is visiting, but Lata, Mary, and Carlos, they all live together. And Lata is trying to meditate. She's really trying to meditate, but John and Carlos are not making it easy because they're in the next room fighting. And it seems that John is getting more and more impatient when it comes to hunting and the Akrita and all of that. And Carlos is the one who's trying to slow him down. Like, let's just get more information. Don't just rush into the situation just because we have one piece of information now doesn't mean we know everything. We need to be better prepared. And it seems like John doesn't see the necessity for that at this point anymore. And he just really wants to find out where Roxy is and just go in guns blazing and do that whole thing. So yeah, he's kind of overdoing it with the fate of the world stuff. So in a way, like the hot-headedness reminds me a little bit of Dean. Just a little bit. I think John is taking it even a little bit further than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they all kind of talk to him, even Mary, and they're like, maybe you need to find a way to deal with this kind of thing. Like either come to therapy with Carlos or start meditating with Lata. But they all recognize at this point he's not okay. And he, of course, is the only one who doesn't see it. He doesn't have a problem. He is focused. And so all of a sudden, there's a phone call that's coming in through the secret phone that Samuel had in the living room in a little nightstand kind of thing. And so Carlos called it the bat phone, which I thought was really funny. So it's a hunters only line, which we've already seen. And if we remember Bobby's house, like he had a wall full of like phones, landlines, and then he also had a bunch of cell phones and they all had stickers on it like FBI, CIA. And so that whenever which phone rang, he knew which role to play. So we already see that the hunters have this kind of thing established where they have their own way of getting in touch with people and staying undercover and all of that. So I thought that was a really nice touch that they put in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so the person who called is an old hunting friend, actually more like Mary calls her an aunt at this time because she has spent so much time with her during her childhood. Her name is Tracy, and she calls because of her friend Darla, who has been killed in Tracy's barn. And so they go there to investigate. They find a claw. The initial thought was werewolf, but Lata says that this claw doesn't look like a werewolf at all. And so Lata has a friend that she brings in to help with the investigation. His name is Anton. And now, for the first time, we see Carlos getting extremely tongue-tied, and he doesn't really know what to say. He's not his usual flirty self because he's actually, what would you call it, awestruck by Anton, because he's completely, like, he's got hearts in his eyes, and oh my God, so cute. So cute. I loved it. I really like, Carlos is my favorite character at this point. I really enjoy the sense of humor that he brings to the show. And yeah, seeing him like this, it was just adorable. Like, my outfit, the pants, the shirt, oh my God, I gotta change everything. It's just, I love it. And yeah, so so John, in the meantime, like, he hears that Tracy has been out of the hunting business for 10 years now. And it doesn't seem like all the monster talk is phasing him at all anymore, but he gets really fascinated with someone getting out of the hunter life. And because that's what Mary wants to do. And it seems like his only goal at this point is to get Mary to retirement. And so Tracy was also the inspiration for Mary to get out because, yeah, it's been 10 years. And so pretty much her entire teenage years, Mary's teenage time, Tracy has been out. And that was kind of the turning point for Mary, where she saw, okay, someone that I know did it. It worked. So maybe I can do it too. And yeah, this is also the first episode where we see a hunter's funeral, which we haven't had up until this point, at least not in this show. And so John now becomes even more determined after seeing the whole funeral process and everything, and being so aware of Mary being in danger, and it, like, defeating the Akrita, and it's like that's like the only thing on his mind anymore. And yeah, it's like he's completely, like, this is his tunnel vision now. Like, there's nothing else for him, and you can see it. It's written all over his face. And so he's starting to become dangerous, which kind of fits with the whole thing of this, because it turns out that the monster they're hunting, they identify it as a Sakuyant, which is a rare vampire witch from the Caribbean. But turns out when John was fighting her and they managed to cut off an arm, and Lata and Anton were like searching for clues and everything, they found ectoplasma. So turns out the monster was already dead and possessed by a vengeful spirit or ghost, which is a first that I don't think we've ever had that on Supernatural, that a monster was possessed by a ghost.
Yeah, I know, that was.
I don't remember that. That's interesting that can actually work. That they can, like, even among those species, I guess, that they can do these kind of things. So that's interesting. And yeah, so John, of course, he goes off on his own. The people don't notice it right away. And in the meantime, Tracy comes clean about everything that happened, and tells them, yeah, 10 years ago, there was this group of us, we were hunting, and there was this one guy, Mac. He was really invested, and he even, like, he got really powerful, and he really just wanted to kill the monsters, get it done, save the world, this kind of stuff. And the other hunters became afraid of him. They didn't know at this point what he would be capable of. And so he became a loose cannon for them, and they ended up trapping him inside of a cave with that monster that was now dead, the Sakuyant. And yeah, they used some C4 trapped him in there, killed him, and they just did that. I mean, it was one of their own, but for them to even feel like this was the last resort, I mean, I can only imagine how much out of control he must have been. I mean, that must be hard to go this far, to do this to a colleague or a friend. So yeah. And then Mary, she's also starting to connect the dots because Carlos has told her about what happened with Marcinetto, and that he was beating him to a pulp. And so she finally realizes that there's more going on. And so she asks him to let him in because he was in her head and he saw everything that was going on in her mind, her past, her feelings, her thoughts. And of course, she wants to know what's going on with him. And he's just blocking it in some way. And he just tells her that this whole thing is about making sure that the Akrita are defeated and that Mary can get out and everything. So it's interesting that Mary then says, "Do not use me as an excuse for dealing with your issues." So there's already the foreshadowing of like even their married life, their relationship, and what happens later on. Once she's dead, she became the excuse for his behavior, for not taking care of his children, for being completely like tunnel visioned once again and everything. And yeah, I think that's already pretty sad to see it this early on, that it didn't really take such a long journey for him to get to that point. And it was not necessarily the death of Mary that turned him there, that this was always kind of there. Since the war, there's probably still some guilty feeling because of Murph, his friend that died on the landmine. And yeah, so it's really difficult for me to connect this John that we see right now in the year 72 to the John that we see in the year 73 on Supernatural, which seems to be a peace-loving, very laid-back kind of fella. Like, I'm really curious to see how Jensen is going to turn this whole thing around and make that make sense, turning him into this almost innocent seeming man, and that we saw in season 4 and 5 of Supernatural. So yeah, in the end, when John is possessed, he fights his friends, and he even ends up hurting Mary. Like, he's physically fighting her, which is something that in his clear mind would probably be the last thing he would do, because he loves this girl and he would never want to put her in harm's way, much less fight her, unless it was like a sparring kind of workout thing. So in the end, they were pretty much almost prepared to kill him. Well, Carlos was the first one who was like, well, what needs to be done needs to be done. And it was Lata who then stepped up, and she stood between John and Carlos and the others. And it was her peaceful way and the way that she talked to the ghost, Mac, and also to John, that really helped with the situation and eventually made the ghost leave. And I think that was a very big moment for her. And in all of that, I kind of felt that, okay, there is more to her family story. There must be a reason why she chose the path of being a pacifist. And I'm thinking something violent must have happened in her family, or that maybe someone in her family got turned on each other and in whatever kind of way. Like, that's my theory at this point.
Yeah.
And what I really liked in the end is that John came to at least a little bit of a realization that he has a problem, but he's not going to do the therapy with Carlos. He actually turned to the person who saved him this time, Lata, and he wanted to learn about meditation. And at first he was laughing about it, but she just took this very seriously, and so he did too. and they were repeating the mantra, I am centered, I'm at peace, I create my own path, I walk on it fearlessly. And that, I have to say kudos to him for doing that, because that was the first step in the right direction. But I'm wondering how long that's going to last.
Yeah.
So, what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was actually pretty good, and it's as we're moving along, we're getting more glimpses into how each one of them thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the setup, but yet I'm still, like you, still wondering where they're going to go with it. I just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the memory that you have when it comes to the Supernatural series. So when you're bringing up some of that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Yeah, so it's like that,
Mm. Yeah. Like this episode, it, like, seeing all of this really makes me sad for Sam and Dean. And like, I really now understand their childhood even better. And it's just like, it's obvious that John never would have been a good father. And the person we see now is way more in line with the person that we know from Supernatural. And I always, like, it felt kind of weird that this peace-loving and almost innocent John from the past in the earlier seasons would then turn into what we saw in season 1.
Right.
Or I don't know, did he die in season 2? I don't even remember anymore. And yeah, so those two characters, they fit together. It's just the one in the middle that doesn't really fit, that they actually have to turn him into to make the storyline be like with the continuity. So yeah, but it's really, it's also like the conversation that they had when Mary said, "Don't blame me for what's going on with you. Don't use me as an excuse." It kind of reflects the whole marriage thing and what happened after, which what Dean said, that she became the perfect wife after she was dead, because it was once again just like this, and he completely disregarded anything that happened before, whether they were always like happy in love or fighting or anything like that. It was like he's so focused on her, and they actually have a very toxic relationship. Like, each of them has their problems, and they don't really communicate too well. It's always like on the surface a little bit. At least Mary seems to let him in a little bit more. But he's really acting like the soldier, like a man knows no pain, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think this was doomed to fail.
It feels like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it seems they really only had one purpose, and that was to have those 2 kids, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So what was Chuck thinking? Seriously. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
he
That's
really
funny.
is a sadist.
Yeah.
I can't say it any other way.
That's funny that you said that, because I'll bet Chuck is going to have something to do with this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, the Akrita, because I don't see them as aliens anymore. I think they're from another dimension, and they're just crossing over. But Chuck eventually created all the dimensions, and he created this whole thing. He already knows how it's going to end.
Right.
It's just that Jack was the one who completely messed with his plans, and the whole Sam and Dean free will kind of thing. But so I'm guessing Chuck, as the orchestrator of all of this, he's gonna have a field trip with this. Like this, I imagine him sitting in his chair watching this on TV like a telenovela, eating his popcorn and being like, "Oh, what's gonna happen next?"
Yeah.
Kind of.
So I got a question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what season they found out Chuck was the writer of their story? Or,
Well, they found out that he was got in, oh my God, it was one of the later seasons.
Was that
But
so?
it
Was that
was,
before they went, or was that
yeah,
before they went back and
before they went back? You
seeing
mean
everyone?
visiting their parents?
Yeah.
No, the visiting the parents was in season 4 and 5, and they found Chuck in, I don't know, was it season 10, 11 or something? Because, um, yeah, they've known that Chuck was God for a while, and then the whole thing with Amara happened with his sister, and that was in season 11. So they must have found him in season 8, 9, or 10, somewhere in there.
Because that could have been a manipulation on Chuck's part too. The whole how they seen him in that time.
Yeah, well, he always wanted to come off as the good guy, of course, but then I guess his sister also ruined it for him because after meeting Amara, that's when Dean started to see things in a different way, and Sam as well. And so they noticed that not everything is just black and white. It's not here are the good guys, here are the bad guys. And it's just like what Dean said. After a while, you don't know which is which anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all a matter of perspective. Just like in Game of Thrones, when the children of the forest created the Night King to deal with the humans that were invading their territory. And then the Night King, of course, created his own army and he went against everyone. But he was just doing his job. You know, he was created for this. So who's really the good guy? Who's really the bad guy?
No
Even
doubt. I just like
even George R.R. Martin, he said that you can spin this from every perspective. Like everyone has their reasons for doing things, and everyone feels justified in why they do these things. So it's at some point really hard to tell the good guys and the bad guys apart. It's really just perspective.
it's absolutely perspective. And Amara, I feel like is like that's our shadow anyway. She's presented
Yeah,
the darkness, and that's you know,
yeah,
it's like no matter what story you're in, you got to face it.
yeah. But in a funny way, it's like with Amara and like Chuck was light, Amara was darkness, and Chuck locked her away. But that was him not doing shadow work because he wanted everything good and, you know, rainbows and unicorns and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought his sister would get in the way. But she was actually the more level headed one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And she, even though being darkness, she didn't really feel the necessity for all these toys, aka us. Um, but she started to come around a little bit more and see the beauty of it, thanks to Dean, who showed her what creation can be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think those two were like Chuck and Omara. They both needed to do their shadow work, but Omara was the one who actually did it.
Yeah, because it's
like the darkness did it, the light didn't.
Because it's like she came in and then the light shone on the truth. You know what I mean? It's like until she came in, there was nothing to shine on. It was all blurred and everything looked, but no, she came in and then she shone light on the truth. It's like, even though she was the darkness, it's ironic.
So in this sense, like John, even though he's trying to be the protector, the knight, the champion, the warrior and everything, but he's slowly turning into a bad guy. And I'm thinking the Akrita, by putting a target on all of their backs pretty much, they're going to enjoy that very much. And that's why I think he is the easiest to corrupt. He is the easiest to switch sides and things like that. All it needs is the right motivation, and that is Mary. And he would probably make a deal with the devil. I mean, we saw him making deals with demons, with Yellow Eyes, in the end to save his son and all of that. So he doesn't hesitate to do that kind of stuff. What needs to be done, and that is that.
Yep. You know, it's interesting because this deck right here has, I think, accepted its role in reading for this because I was only shuffling. I hadn't even asked a question about the episode. And the Knight of Bones or the Knight of Wands come up upside down in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And also the Justice card.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like that's saying the whole thing that they went through with that possessed
Mhm.
monster, and then
Yeah.
the ghost possesses John. It's like they're not really, I mean, they're being pushed into doing something without having all the facts,
Yeah.
you know, and but yet they want justice,
Mhm.
you know. I feel like that whole scene as it was playing out was those two guards right there.
Yes. And also something that I forget sometimes as I watch this, because I know the older versions of them, but right now they're still kids. They're just like 18, 19 years old. And even though some of them have been doing this for quite some time, especially Mary, but they still don't really know anything about the real world, even though John has seen combat and stuff. But there's so much more to life, like the very mundane things of, you know, paying your bills and doing all that normal
Right.
stuff. And they're so cooped up in this one thing, but they really haven't lived yet, and they're still like in the mindset of teenagers. And
Yeah.
it really shows, like, for this episode it was kind of like, I wonder how it would have gone differently if Ada had been there to give some motherly advice, because this time they only had Tracy, but she was also keeping secrets and all of that,
Right.
and feeling justified in that. So yeah, I think if, like, they're doing this all on their own. Samuel is gone. Ada is the only parent-like figure in this whole thing, but even she is keeping quiet a lot of times. So yeah, I wonder in a bigger group with someone like Bobby around, or even Donna or Jody, how things would play then. And because they were always cautioning a lot more, like, get the facts, get the details, don't rush into it, just like that, and don't be blindsided by your emotions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm seeing that a lot of this is happening because they're just kids. And then
Absolutely.
to feel that responsibility to save the world from the biggest known threat up to date, um, yeah, I mean, that's got to do something with them. And I
Absolutely.
wonder what after all of this is said and done will happen to Lata and Carlos and Ada and all of
Yeah, me
this,
too.
because
Yeah.
we've never heard from them ever again. So they were just invented for this show.
Yeah.
And if they got out, if they lived normal lives, or if they were more like Bobby, you know, like people to turn to in need of help, not really actively hunting anymore. So, or if some of them end up getting killed. We don't know that yet.
I know that's where my mind first went, was that
Hmm.
maybe, and that was something that maybe John couldn't deal with too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm. But next episode is episode 8. Loki. Gabriel is coming back. I'm so excited for that one.
Oh, I am too. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it better be good. I wonder what kind of storyline they're gonna do with that, because it seems that, I mean, it would be the obvious choice to make him the monster, or at least like pulling some strings with a
Oh,
monster.
yeah. Yeah.
Because um
Yeah, because we
I
don't
don't
know
think
that he's
the
really a good guy.
Akrita, yeah, I don't think the Akrita would go after a god to collect the essence. I don't think that's the plan. I think he's gonna go in there, have a little bit of fun, and see what's what. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But I'm definitely curious for that
Me
one.
too.
I've been
Me
waiting for
too.
this for a while now, and now it's finally here next week.
Yeah.
There better be an episode next week. Like, I don't care what kind of holidays we have. I want to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was still surprised they didn't really talk too much about Samuel in this time. Oh, one thing that I also found interesting, when Tracy was talking to Mary, and Mary was like talking about her parents, that her mom was in Minnesota and Samuel was God knows where. And so Tracy was like, oh, so they're split up again. And Mary didn't even know that her parents had split at some point, which is kind of like the same thing that happens with her and John, because when they had a fight, John moved out for a couple days and then he came back and all that. So yeah, so it's kind of like Mary is mirroring her parents' relationship
Yeah.
in a way. And
Mm.
yeah, so that's also like this kind of like, how much do we take on from our parents and how much
Yeah.
can we break free?
Yeah. It makes me wonder how dark they're going to go with it, really, honestly,
Yeah.
because the psyche is very dark.
Mm.
I mean, sometimes it really is.
Yeah. And I was waiting to talk about this a little bit later to see what happens, but I think we can already go into it. Like the creators of the show, like Jensen and his wife, they wanted to tackle the topic of mental health with this show, and they are really like now getting into that. Like we see it with John. Like this is a perfect example of someone in desperate need of help and refusing it, and we see what happens if you just deny the obvious and just try to deal with it on your own.
Yep.
So I mean, if that show at the end of the day lets people know that, hey, if you need help, ask for it, go and
Yeah.
find someone. If it's not
Yep.
this one thing, maybe another thing can help, but please don't do this alone. Please don't pretend that there's not a problem. So if that's coming out of this show and if that can actually help people, then yay, I say good, well done.
Me too. Me too. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, we have now 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have 6 more episodes left. And actually, no, wait, season 7, episode 7, I think we have the mid-season finale.
Oh, so then we got to wait for a little bit,
I
probably.
think they're probably not going to do anything in December now with Christmas time and everything.
Right.
They're going to make me wait. How dare you? How dare you?
I know it.
Yeah, I remember.
Come on,
I was
guys.
just reading that somewhere that season 7, episode 7 was going to be the mid-season finale.
Oh, well, poop.
Now that you got me invested, now you stop.
Exactly. Yeah, because we've had that roller coaster thing going on. Like, do we like
Yeah.
it now? Yeah.
Now I want to know what happens, and now they do that on purpose. I'm telling you.
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, then I guess I don't really know when we will do episode 8 of Let's Talk the Winchesters. I guess we'll just have to see when the show comes back. I'm thinking probably January, February.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, that could also mean that they're still like filming some of the stuff that they haven't really ended it already.
Maybe. Maybe they're watching
Since they're
shows like
not putting.
this.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
Yeah, so since they're not putting too many special effects into this, I mean, it's not that much of work with post-production as in some of the Supernatural episodes. So, yeah, maybe they already know if it's going to be picked up or not for another season. So I hope if they already know, if in case it gets canceled, that they really wrap it up in a way that doesn't leave any questions open, that gives us no cliffhangers, and ties the knot to Supernatural. So yeah, because like there was one other show, I don't know which show it was, but they were already thinking ahead with the end of first season that they filmed 2 alternative endings, and depending on whether they were canceled or not, that would be the ending that they would use.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, nowadays you got to think that far because everything is just getting canceled.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so well, I guess we will not see each other next week for this show. So in that case, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with us, talking about the Winchesters. Leave us a comment of what you thought about this episode and how this is turning out and developing and all that good stuff. And if we don't see you until the next episode, have a good Christmas time with your family, and we'll see you next time. Bye.